All right, as good as it was last week to be in Atlanta, we are back in New York City. You know what we're talking about, Super Bowl 53. Tyler Sullivan's going to help us do it, my colleague at 24/7 Sports, and every single thing you need to know about the Patriots doing what they always do and winning another championship starting right now. All right, what's going on? Bill Reiter with you. Look, we don't do hot takes here at CBS Sports HQ, but I suppose on this one, I'm the contrarian because, yes, 13-3 was a historically low-scoring affair in the history of Super Bowls, but I didn't find it boring. I actually found it, at every step of the way, utterly and totally riveting because this was Sean McVay, the young genius, the wonderkin, the offensive future of the league in the present, about to take down the 66-year-old former all-time great in Bill Belichick. And what happened? The hoodie was masterly. This was Bill Belichick's opus last night. And to watch that level of history being cemented for me was absolutely remarkable and hard to look away from. I thought the beauty of the game was in how badly the Rams' high-powered, super hyped offense played because Belichick is that good. In fact, speaking of cementing things, last night, Bill Belichick cemented his place as the greatest coach in the history of, full stop, American sports. Not modern American sports, not the NFL, not the major sports, American sports over a 2-decade stretch in which the most difficult game on earth, because it's the game that produces the most money for its owners, has been calibrated for parity. We're talking about the free agency era. Belichick has been nothing short of astounding. This is the most difficult professional sport to dominate. It's the most important professional sport to dominate. And over 18 seasons, the Patriots have won the Super Bowl 33% of the time. Bill Belichick, as an assistant and a head coach, has competed in, as a coach of some kind, 22.5% of every Super Bowl ever. Here's another side note as we dive into this. In all 6 Super Bowl winning seasons, Belichick's defense, he's a defensive guy, has never ranked below 8th in the NFL in points allowed per game. Half the time, in fact, it was in the top 2, and in the postseason, his defenses have made the most prolific offenses look like JV teams. Remember, they shut down that Chiefs team, shut them out last week. That was a top 4 offense this year. And then you know what they did yesterday? They made Jared Goff look like, they showed at the beginning of the CBS broadcast, like back in 2002, whatever it was, Goff was in first grade. He looked like a first grade quarterback last night. Let me just give this real quick. These are the only 12 Rams drives. Punt, 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 punt. Hope that's 8 in a row. Field goal, punt, interception, missed field goal. Absolutely amazing what Belichick accomplished. The Rams in the first Super Bowl against the Patriots, the Rams, who'd averaged 31.4 points per game, were held by Belichick and co. all those years ago to just 17 points. In this Super Bowl, they held a team that averaged almost 33 points a game to 3 points. That's the least amount ever scored in the Super Bowl, and it was a high-powered offense shepherded by probably, supposedly, maybe, I think it'll still be, an offensive genius in Sean McVay. But here's the deal. Belichick looked across the aisle, looked across the sideline at the guy we all anointed as the future coach of the league, and utterly and totally owned him. And in a battle of geniuses, Belichick was in such suffocating domination that afterwards, Sean McVay had to admit that the hoodie got the best of him.
I was not pleased at all with my feel for the flow of the game and kind of making some adjustments as the game unfolded and to giving ourselves a chance to have some success and put some points on the board. And, you know, credit to them, and they did a good job, and I certainly didn't do good enough for us, but they did a great job. It was a great game plan, and, you know, no other way to say it, but I got outcoached tonight.
Look, it takes a real man, and McVay was that, to admit you got owned. But Bill Belichick made him look like a man-child in that game. It's not a criticism. I think McVay's actually going to be great. We'll get into that in the days ahead, what his future might hold. Bill Belichick, at least in the present last night, utterly and totally put a cap on the ascending greatness of the Rams' young head coach. And the last few years, as we've discussed, the last few times we've discussed the Patriots' greatness at a Super Bowl, it's been about Tom Brady, and for good reason. He's amazing. The last 5 seasons, in fact, have been all about the undisputed greatest quarterback in the history of the game. We got the Seahawks comeback, that Falcons comeback, which was astounding, the 2-point conversions. And in some ways, Bill Belichick had become somewhat of an afterthought in regards to how these things went down. Before last night, in fact, the hoodie hadn't truly captained the ship on the merit of dominating defense since that Super Bowl win over the Eagles back in 2004, 2005. This is his legacy coming full circle with an ultimate, indisputable, greatest of all time game last night. And not to pick on the guy, Brady wasn't very good last night. Brady was bad last night. You're talking about a Patriots team that scored just 13 points, the fewest ever in a Super Bowl by the winner. If Sean McVay hadn't gotten utterly outcoached by Belichick, we're talking about Wade Phillips right now and his genius in slowing down Brady and McDaniels and that Belichick-led team. This was a Bill Belichick win under the highest of pressures against the future of the league. And by the way, Belichick is pretty reticent. He likes sarcasm. He hides under his hoodie and kind of mumbles. But even this guy knew it. Last night, when it was all said and done, because when have we ever seen him act like he did on the podium with Jim Nantz, even after winning a Super Bowl?
How sweet is this one of all the ones you've had?
It's sweet. It's sweet, Jim. Everybody counted us out from the beginning of the season to mid-season, but we're still here.
I mean, that's so out of control, Bill Belichick speaking that long. It's like any other player just full-on, like, open palm slapping someone from too much emotion. A few facts. Let them sink in from Belichick. There's so much greatness in that Patriots organization. It's easy to take for granted. I don't think people will 10, 15 years from now. He's won 6 Super Bowls, Belichick, as a head coach. It's the most ever. He has 9 conference championships. That's the most ever in the history of the NFL. He has 31 playoff wins as a head coach. That's the most ever in the history of the National Football League. And he's the oldest coach to ever win a Super Bowl. He's 66. And next year, the Patriots at 7-1, the odds came out last night, are the second most likely team after the Chiefs to win Super Bowl 54 down in Miami. This guy is remarkable. It is astounding. I'm not taking anything away from Julian Edelman. We'll get to him later. Not taking anything away from that defense, some of the actual players on the field. I actually think one of those Patriots defenders could have been the MVP. And Brady's amazing. And it takes a village to win a championship. But last night, the mayor of that village, the leader of that village, the guy who really was honored by what went down is the hoodie. He is the greatest coach in the history of American sports. And he didn't just do it under the most stressful of situations. He did it against the future version of himself, but the offensive version. I still think that's true in Sean McVay. Bill Belichick, we're not doubting you anymore if we ever did in the first place. We're going to do total Patriots and some Rams conversation for the entirety of the show, including Tyler Sullivan. He covers this team, the Patriots, for 24/7 Sports. Want to get his take on this group he's covered all year long. Tyler's going to join me live from New York City on Writer's Block, post Super Bowl 53 edition, when we continue next here on CBS Sports HQ. All right, welcome back into New York City and Writer's Block here on CBS Sports HQ, your home for streaming sports. We just gave you a look back at that incredible game from last night. I think it was incredible. I'm in the minority, but want to go to a guy who covers his Patriots team every single day, Tyler Sullivan, my colleague. Check him out at 24/7 Sports. Tyler, maybe I'm a contrarian. Thanks for being here. I sort of enjoyed the Bill Belichick dominating Sean McVay masterpiece last night.
Yeah, of course. I mean, who doesn't like the punter contest? I mean, that's what it's all about, isn't it? That's what you get to Super Bowl 53 for. No, I did think it was an entertaining game. I mean, it wasn't the 25-point comebacks or the Philly specials that we've seen over the course of these Patriots Super Bowls over the last 3 years, but it was close. It was contentious. You had to kind of have those questions of, all right, Tom Brady doesn't look particularly good here. They're only up by 3 points. They are up. But when do the Rams start to become the Rams? When does Brandon Cooks rip off a 65-yard touchdown? When does Todd Gurley stop having this mystery around him? There was those questions around it. So I did think that there was plenty of storylines in an entertaining fashion in this Super Bowl, just not what we're normally used to with the Patriots.
All right, Tyler, you're around this team all the time. Maybe decode Bill Belichick for us, get us inside and what's underneath the hoodie a little bit. How much do you think, speculation or otherwise, how much do you think he was motivated beyond the obvious Super Bowl of just proving everyone wrong that he's still in the game and that it's not Sean McVay's league, at least not yet?
No, I think it's huge. And I mean, you go to those post-game interviews there, him at the podium with Jim Nantz. He's the one saying that nobody believed in us. And that kind of made my ears perk up a little bit because you don't really hear Bill Belichick say anything, Tom Brady, any of those guys say anything out of the New England Patriots. And all of a sudden you have Bill Belichick the grunty Bill Belichick, the hoodie at the podium, then say, listen, nobody believed in us all year. Well, now you're starting to hear it from the head guy there. You started obviously hear the underdog battle cries there from the team and from the players, starting with Tom Brady after the AFC divisional round. But now you're hearing it from the head coach. And I do think there's something to be said there for the just universal maybe wanting the Patriots to go away. Maybe the Patriots are not that good anymore because they did struggle on the road this season. And you know Bill Belichick as well as I do, seeing him over the past, nearly 2 decades in New England now, they use any sort of thing that they can to drive the motivation in that locker room. I call it the Patriots propaganda, whatever they have pumping in the megaphones there at Gillette Stadium. And to me, this is just the latest, addition to that because the Patriots have been around for so long. They are coming off of that loss in Super Bowl 52, their struggles on the road. Now, all of a sudden, people started to doubt them, and I do think there's something to be said there for that competitive fire for Bill Belichick to say, hey, whoa. This is still our turf. This is still who we are, no matter when there is the Patrick Mahomeses in Kansas City's with Andy Reid or the Sean McVay and Jared Goffs out there in LA. The Patriots, as they like to do with their mottos, they are, quote unquote, still there, still here.
All right, speaking of Patrick Mahomes and Kansas City, the odds are out for next year's Super Bowl because it's never too early to start thinking about how to lose money on the Patriots again. Chiefs are the most likely team to win the Super Bowl, according to Vegas, at 6-1. Right after those guys, the familiar name Patriots at 7-1. What's a realistic timeline here? How long are Bill Belichick and Tom Brady going to continue to be Super Bowl contenders down the road?
Well, I mean, this is a really interesting offseason. I really do think that it's something to keep an eye on here because, and we've seen obviously the Patriots rebuild over the course of their tenure here. Obviously, their first Super Bowl against the Rams, there's only 2 guys, and even going back to that Seattle Super Bowl a few years ago, it's a completely different team there. This offseason's really interesting. Of course, Tom Brady said he wants to play till he's 45, and I've just been inclined to believe him. He's going to be around for the next few years. He obviously has 1 more year left on his contract. They'll definitely need to renegotiate that to some degree there to maybe get his cap number down while giving him some more dollars. But I do think it's interesting to see what you look at. There's the question of Rob Gronkowski now. He's obviously not saying anything last night about his future, but it seems like there's so much smoke about retirement that it looks like he'll probably walk away. And now you have the questions of the McCourty twins, specifically Devin McCourty. He looks like he may even retire. I mean, you have a lot of questions around this team in terms of the pillars of these last few Super Bowl championships. So they're going to have to retool on offense to have those big play, home run hitters if you're going to lose a guy like Gronk. And on defense, too, you have to rebuild that secondary a little bit. So it's going to be an interesting offseason for the Patriots. But again, as long as you have Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, it's hard to count them out of this. So to me, as long as those 2 guys are still there, and I see them at least being there for the next 2 years, the Patriots will always be that threat.
All right, so Tyler, I'm not trying to write off Tom Brady. I made that mistake a few years ago. But at some point, presumably, as a mortal man, age is going to catch up to the guy. Last night, did we see the season catch up to Brady, or was it just Wade Phillips' game plan making things really tough for a guy who's going to be just fine next season?
Yeah, it could be a little bit of both there. I mean, yeah, every time, just because you say that, all right, he's not looking particularly great, doesn't mean that you're, pushing him off the cliff as they've so famously coined. You can just be, descriptive about it and say, listen, a couple of those throws last night weren't that great. He had a couple of bad throws in that game. Tom Brady did not really have a great Super Bowl. But I don't think you necessarily need Tom Brady to be the 2007. I know they didn't win that year, but just this prolific quarterback to win these Super Bowls. If they rebuild this thing the right way, Tom Brady's mind isn't going to age. Tom Brady's physical attributes may start to dwindle a little bit, but if they build a roster around him, and I've used in the past the Peyton Manning Broncos of a few years ago of Super Bowl 50, Peyton Manning was a shell of himself in that championship run. But if all of a sudden you build a great defense around him and you build an offense that can really cater to him, and as long as he doesn't make the key critical mistakes, then they should be okay. And I think that's what the Patriots should do in these waning years of Tom Brady. If they can build through the draft or build through free agency to have a couple of those guys that Tom Brady can lean on, maybe, the next version of Rob Gronkowski, the next version of Devin McCourty, in the secondary there, an anchor in that defense, well, then you don't really need Tom Brady to be Tom Brady as much as we've seen. Again, last night in that Super Bowl, like you said, he wasn't particularly that great. I didn't see, a couple of throws there that I was scratching my head at. But on that final or that lone touchdown drive of this game, Brady was a little bit like Tom Brady. Completed all 4 of his passes for 67 yards. That beauty of a pass to Rob Gronkowski for 29 yards to set up that touchdown. If he only needs to be Tom Brady in those little moments, I think that he'll be able to do that over these next couple of years here until he reaches 45. It's just the question of, can Bill Belichick, the GM, build a team around Tom Brady where he doesn't have to be this GOAT-like figure all the time?
All right, Tyler, if we were to take us to breath, right, and those that hate the Patriots, just let it go, and those of us that maybe are given to hyperbole, sort of just take a moment, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, where do Bill Belichick and Tom Brady and the combo of those two guys, where do they rate in the pantheon of not just the NFL, but American sports in general?
I mean, I think you'd have to put them right at the top there. And I say this, broadcasting from New England, obviously, but at the same time, I mean, the NFL, as much as the MLB is America's pastime, the NFL is king in America, in North American sports. It really drives the passion behind every other sports team and sports league. And you're talking about two guys, Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, that have not only been able to win at a historic clip, but continue to win over the 17 years. Like, if you would, obviously it'd be impressive if you rattle off similar to like Michael Jordan and the Bulls, where he went 3-3 at that year where he wasn't around. But basically under Michael Jordan, they rattled off 6 championships in the NBA. It would be impressive if the Patriots did that as well. But the fact that they've been so competitive over 17 years, and there was a stretch there, obviously, from 2004 to 2014, where they weren't winning Super Bowls, but they were still among the best of the best, appearing in Super Bowls, coming close, but not really climbing the mountaintop, but still a very good team. The fact that they were able to do that in the age of free agency, in the age of where if you're so good, you have a tougher schedule, you have a lower draft selection, and we all know this, Bill Belichick always trades out of the first round anyways. The fact that they're able to do all of that and still be a competitive football team and now rattle off 3 championships in 5 years to really kind of bookend these two dynasties together, there's really no other argument there. I mean, you're putting them up against Bill Russell and Red Auerbach with the Celtics back in the day. Obviously, Michael Jordan's the Bulls, the Montreal Canadiens. I mean, you're up there with those elite runs of these franchises. And I'd put them right at the top. I mean, the NFL, it just doesn't, it's not, they're breaking the league. There really isn't a way that's designed for them to do this, and they're doing it anyways. So to me, it's just, really just a loss for words in terms of what they've been able to do here over the past near 20 years.
When I was reporting full-time across a lot of sports, I'd be around some teams that had this great perception publicly, couldn't stand those guys. I'd be around teams and coaches who people loathe. Nick Saban comes to mind. And behind the scenes, I actually sort of enjoyed the experience of being around that organization. The Patriots, as you just laid out, are one of the greats of all time. You're around them a lot. Pull back the curtain for us. How do guys that cover this team day in, day out feel about that organization and being around that organization?
It's fun, but it's also maddening at times. I mean, you do have those moments where, they are that steel trap. They are that we're not going to really say anything because we know that's the betterment for the team. And you understand that. You accept that. You say, okay, listen, Bill Belichick's not going to say anything. He's just going to say we're on to Kansas City or we're on to Cincinnati when they do have those tough losses. Particularly it comes to mind when they lose to, Detroit and Jacksonville earlier in the year. It seems like things are kind of sputtering out of control. They really do kind of bunker down in-house there. But then all of a sudden you start to have these crazy runs here, and you just get to see first and foremost that magic up close of how this team can flip the switch and kind of really get on a run. It's something that you never really are able to see in most sports and in most anything, really. All of a sudden, you're looking at this team in week 16 and week 17, and they're beating up the Buffalo Bills and the New York Jets, and you say, all right, well, yeah, of course they're going to beat these teams up. It's the end of the year. These two teams have wrapped it up. It's really not indicative of to what this team actually is. And then all of a sudden they get into the postseason, and you say, oh, wow, that really was a turning point for them. And they knew that, but we didn't. There was a subtle confidence of this team saying, yeah, we figured it out. This was who we are.
Tyler Sullivan, really appreciate the perspective from New England. Thanks, buddy. Let's do it again. We'll do it again next year when they win another one.
Yeah, no problem. See you in Miami.
I appreciate you. Good stuff. Tyler Sullivan. We got an the ground view from a guy that covers his team every day, and now we're going to get a view from the numbers, inside the numbers, on Super Bowl 53 when we come back to the program back in New York City after a week in Atlanta next here on Reiter's Block. All right, welcome back into New York City. It's Reiter's Block. We were in Atlanta last week. It's good to be back in the home office, and we're going to do what we always do at this part of the show. We're going to go inside the numbers this time on Super Bowl, as you imagine, 53, which we saw on Super Bowl last night, or on CBS last night. And we start with the number 13. The Patriots' 13 points are the fewest amount scored by the winning team in a Super Bowl ever, breaking the Dolphins' mark of 14 points when they capped off their undefeated season at Super Bowl 7. How about the number 1? Only a single touchdown was scored, the fewest number of touchdowns ever recorded in the Super Bowl. Previously, at Super Bowl 3, was the only Super Bowl with as few as 2 total touchdowns. Next up is number 3. All these numbers are small for a reason. The Rams' 3 points is the lowest point total by Los Angeles since Sean McVay took over as head coach. It was just the 3rd time the Rams scored single digits under McVay. 8 is next up here on Inside the Numbers. LA had 8 consecutive drives and in punts, the most in the history of the Super Bowl. At halftime, put in perspective, Rams punter Johnny Hekker had more punts than poor Jared Goff had completions. How about 65? Hekker notched the longest punt in Super Bowl history at 65 yards, breaking Patriots punter Ryan Allen's record of 64 yards in Super Bowl 49 a few years ago. I'm glad we're getting to Edelman. 11. Man, Edelman was so good. Julian Edelman had 11 receiving yards in his entire collegiate career. On Sunday, he caught 10 passes for 141 yards en route to that Super Bowl MVP. And finally, the number 6, with his 6th Lombardi trophy, Tom Brady now has more Super Bowl wins than any other quarterback has Super Bowl starts. John Elway has started in the 2nd most Super Bowls with 5. And we know this, right? But I think it bears saying again, this legacy of Brady and Belichick and the absurd numbers we keep throwing at you would be, maybe will be, remarkable and beyond description, all the superlatives we should have. If it were over, they're still building. They're the 2nd most likely team to win the Super Bowl next year. If Brady wins a single Super Bowl, one more, another one, gets to 7, as an individual, and Belichick too, they'll have more Super Bowl championships than the next closest organization. The Steelers have 6. They've already tied the Steelers in the history of the Steelers' remarkable franchise. It is a thing to behold, and you don't have to be a Patriots fan. I'm not a hater either. We are watching Tiger when he was at his best. We're watching Jordan when he just stood there and watched that winning shot. We're watching LeBron in that ridiculous comeback against the Warriors a few years ago. We're watching Ali at the height of his powers. We might be watching something even more impressive given the time that we're in and the degree of difficulty in winning 1, let alone 2, let alone 6 and counting championships in the free agency era of the National Football League when it is the ultimate sport in American culture. It is incredible what each of these guys did. And I will say this too, I didn't bet on the game. I told you I picked the Rams, but I didn't feel good about it. I did have James White first touchdown. That didn't work out. But I put an uncomfortable amount of money on the first half under, and I've never had, well, we all bet in our range, right? At the very top of my comfort zone, that was the easiest walk-away win at that level of betting I've ever had. Thank you, anemic offenses, for making that a profitable day. And thank you for hanging out here on the show. We're going to dive into Sean McVay tomorrow. We'll, of course, start to get into all the NBA news that's out there, but there's more Super Bowl talk for you coming up on CBS Sports HQ. Sportsline's got you covered with whatever moves you want to make with your own personal money in about 30 minutes. And I'm Bill Reiter here on Reiter's Block. I'll be back tomorrow on this show, 5 o'clock Eastern, 2 Pacific. See you then, and thank you for hanging out.